Well, hello everybody. Thank you very much, Thomas and Christian, for inviting me today. My name is Luc Richner. I'm originally from Basel, based in Zurich at the moment, which I'll be happy to discuss afterwards why that's the case. I think because of lack of these kind of events 5 years ago. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Vigia, and I'll share a little bit more about what we do in a second. I mentioned born in Basel, based in Zurich, and common denominators throughout my career, if you want to call it like that, was supply chain management and global supply chains. Who is Vigia? What is kind of Vigia? Who are we? What do we do? At the end of the day, it's digital, it's a supply chain management platform, it's a quality control, quality assurance, seed-to-sale tracking platform, where we have created a digital twin for Vigia in the cannabis space. I'll be talking about cannabis and why highly regulated supply chains have a bit of a different, a different need when it comes to transparency and compliance. And I guess the biggest milestone that we've achieved as a young company, we signed a 10-year contract with the Health Ministry of Switzerland, and you will hear a little bit more about the current pilot projects or those trials for legalization, which all go through our software system. We have customers in about, it's a bit more than 80 right now, in 22 countries, on a B2B level, and one government contract in Switzerland. And the whole thing, as I mentioned before, is around supply chain management, compliance in between. This here is in any other industry, this is actually the whole idea in one slide here. We create a digital twin from seed to sale, and in any other industry that is not so highly regulated, you can easily get banking services, you get insurances, auditors, and logistics services into any industry. Consultants are always there to take your money, so just be a bit aware. In any industry before, even there is an industry there. So this was the main pain point. I come from logistics. I looked at the global supply chain, which was not existing in cannabis, and figured out through full transparency, through full traceability, through pharmaceutical processes, you can actually build through a live audit trail in the back end that is then timestamped. We'll go a little bit more into the tech in a second. Something that actually allows the regulator to accept a new industry, and once the regulator accepts a new industry, you get banks, insurances, logistics providers to also bring the third-party services to it. As I mentioned, 10-year contract with the Swiss Health Ministry. It's really nice to travel the world and say we got the Swiss government behind us, because for some reason everybody trusts them, and that legitimized our approach, and and it works. We're here to talk about Web3 a little bit, more or less. We are a cloud-based solution. I'll tell you why we're a cloud-based solution. Our first tech stack that we transformed was KYC AML tech for ICO fundraising for smallholder investors. Anybody that knows about compliance and KYC and all that stuff, that's kind of the highest level you can go. We then transformed that and said if that works for small investor protection in ICO fundraising, that should work for cannabis. Went to the Swiss regulator and a couple of other ones, and they said, do you really want to prove cannabis with blockchain? Pick your battle, pick one at a time. So we completely pivoted and did the whole thing a bit lower tech. I do believe very much in the future of some of these technological applications, but everything has its time. And that's kind of, I was asked to make a little bit of a point of, where is the tech and where are we now, where will we go? And it's beautiful to talk with, great buzzwords, AI, blockchain. There's no AI, it's all machine learning on steroids, but that's a story we can talk about later. Basically, we had this future-proof technology in a time where we were just too early, so we had to tone it down. The success gives us right with the government contract in Switzerland. I'm advising about 8 different governments around the world right now in legalization of cannabis and how that can be done. And again, it's through full transparency. So if you have a new technology, and if you have a product like cannabis, where everybody doesn't want to touch it, it's really easy to come with innovation. And innovation isn't always the future. It's about what is accepted by society in the present. And I would have loved to stick to our first tech stack. It was so much more exciting. But, well, it was not viable yet. Know your product, KYP. I was asked, what do you really want to do with your tech? Where do you want this whole thing to go? And I, as a joke, said in a management retreat with my team, I said, you know what? I want to do what KYC is for finance without being the pain in the to be that for products, for global supply chains and for consumer protection and so forth. And my CTO basically said, Luke, knowyourproduct.com costs $1,000 and KYP.org 500, and it's a non-claimed term, so we're globally registering the term Know Your Product and KYP to actually verify transparent, real-time, live data supply chains towards the end consumer. Data protection via blockchain, because 2019 it was really great to scale, to yell cannabis in blockchain, and you know it's a really nice combination if you raise money at the time, and so we had to kind of feed it in there. In the same time, I really believe in it. So what do? We have a live audit trail in the back end. That live audit trail is time-stamped by a company called OriginStamp. So we kind of have used this as an external layer of validation or of immutability or not. So it's kind of our own auditor at any given time to make sure that the database can't be changed. And so we're blockchain. For anybody that really understands, we're not really, but we are. 95% people were blockchain. For the other 5%, please don't ask me anything about the details. What did we do with the Swiss government? Well, you saw before that slide of the supply chain, and we started with how can we build something that is future-proof based on existing standards. So we looked at pharmaceutical standards, we looked at any other standard out there, and you know, every standard is always who does what, when, how, and why. It's very easy. It gets very complicated and very daunting if you go into pharmaceutical grade supply chains. So we said if we can do pharma and we can do food safety, we can do everything in between. So we went fully for the pharma standards, asked the Swiss regulator and other ones, which one do you want for cannabis? They're like, oh well, it's an illegal drug. It's, or I always say it's from seed to sale. So from the same seed, you have either a medical, which is the highest grade of compliance, you have a consumer good, cosmetic, somewhere in between, or you have an illegal drug. So basically, either you go to jail, or you make a lot of money, and we are kind of the balance in between that. Not saying that we make a lot of money if you use our software, but it's one step closer to not getting to jail. So based on the supply chain part, tell me how much time I have here. Based on the supply chain part, we then won that government contract. It was really beautiful to, for 1.5 years, advise the government as the representative of the industry, then have to go for a public tender. We were not paid for advising and putting a lot of time into this. Then pay to, all right, good, perfect. And then had to go for the public tender, which we luckily won. And then we had basically 1.5 years of advising, then turning that into a product. We are the reporting system from the health ministry. You have below the Kanton, the Gemeinde, you have the Zuchtstelle, you have the university, you have the qualified person, who's the person that is responsible for everything. You have cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, point of sale, consumer, and police. Now, I'm so glad it's not me that had to bring all of that into one product, but we did it. We actually delivered on time. The cannabis that was delivered was not quality. The quality of the cannabis was delivered in Basel. I don't know if anybody of you heard about that. For the first project of these legalization or pilot projects in Switzerland, was not the right quality. It's kind of because it came out of the system that it's not the right quality. It kind of sucks when you have the whole world looking at Switzerland. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but the whole world was looking at Switzerland. It was the first time in Europe a legal gram of cannabis went over the counter. And the original starting date we delivered on time, but the cannabis was not quality control, or the quality control, it failed the quality control. So, cut a long story short, if you want to, buy legal weed in Switzerland or in Basel or wherever you are, there are projects all around in Basel, Zurich, Lausanne, Geneva, Bern, yada yada yada, about 12 of them, and about 30 by next year. Go sign up somewhere. If you sign up, you get a QR code. That QR code is from our software. You heard now what happens in the back is basically the entire supply chain. You can buy a certain amount of of pure cannabis, which is 10 grams, and in the back end it calculates if you have 20% THC, 10 grams of weed, or if you have, well, every other thing I can talk about later. I think I'm up with time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and yeah.